Good evening. I'm Stephen Pickering, and welcome to the Bay Ridge Community Forum Against Hate. When Patriot Front and believers of their hate-filled, racist, xenophobic, homophobic, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic ideology decided to make their presence known in Bay Ridge and other neighborhoods in Brooklyn, well, we decided to do what we do best: stand up, fight back. That's right. Even last night, this very church was stickered and flyered by these cowards. We will not be cowed, and instead gather here tonight to take next steps. I'd like to thank Pastor Dave Aha Sigmund for hosting our forum and graciously allowing us to meet in his church. Please be mindful of your surroundings and turn down your cell phones. We have a few rules for tonight. Number 1, please don't take any unauthorized photographs in the church. 2, please no food or drink in the church. 3, we will have a question and answer portion after Daryle Jenkins makes his presentation. Questions are limited to 30 seconds and 1 follow-up if needed. We have a lot of people here tonight, and we want to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to ask a question. Number 4, we reserve the right to ask anyone who behaves in a disruptive manner to leave. Pastor Dave will moderate the question and answer. Please be respectful of him and these rules. In the back are baskets for donations for the food pantry. Please get what you can. Downstairs, there are bags of coffee for sale. They're $8, and proceeds also go to feed the hungry. We greatly appreciate any help there. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Lamont Jenkins is an activist, founder, and executive director of One People's Project. Mr. Jenkins has been documenting and writing about right-wing individuals and organizations since 1989. He founded One People's Project in 2000 out of a counter-protest to a nationalist movement in New Jersey. He has also helped members of the alt-right leave these circles. His work has been turned into both a documentary, Erasing Hate, and a 2018 feature-length film, Skin. Welcome, Daryle, and thank you for coming.
Hello, everyone. How you doing today? Hope you can hear me. I got the lav mic on, so hopefully it's working. And bear with me, because every now and then I'm going to hit that water because I have this persistent cough that has not left me since September. So I apologize in advance. But I'm really happy that y'all are here today. It's unfortunate that you have to be here for something like this. But hey, I'm glad you are here for something like this because we need to handle it. And that's one of the reasons why Patriot Front is afraid, because they know that we are going to handle it. Truth of the matter is, when you see those stickers that was plastered all over the church last night, that's as good as it gets with them. Patriot Front is a group that does not like to be seen. They do not like to be seen unless you're looking at their flyers. Then they can advertise the fact that they had their flyers here and there. But they don't want you to see them. I mean, truth of the matter is, if you see them, what happens? We respond to them. And when you respond to them, they get neutralized. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Who they are and how to neutralize them. So, again, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Pastor Dave, for the church. Thank you, Sally and Fight Back Bay Ridge for bringing me here. Thank you, Spencer, for bringing me here. This is going to be a conversation that I hope that everybody gets a lot out of. Now, for those who don't know who I am, never heard of me, or don't know what the heck am I doing in Bay Ridge, my name again is Lamont Jenkins. I have been doing this for 30 years, chasing after neo-Nazis, and over the past 20 years I've been catching them. One People's Project has been around for 20 years. This is going to be our 20th anniversary, July 4th, 2000. And primarily, I'm a writer by vocation. I do have a few opinion op-ed pieces in newspapers. I was an editor of my community newspaper at one time. So, media is my thing. Writing is my thing, and writing is my weapon. So, when we started One People's Project, it was in response to a white supremacist rally that was taking place in Morristown, New Jersey, 45 minutes away from where we are today, New Brunswick, New Jersey. And we didn't see too many hate rallies, or at least white power rallies in the state of New Jersey. Heck, we didn't even see them in New York until maybe 10 months before, because on October 16th of 99, the Klan rally happened over in Canal. And that was only the second Klan rally in New York City's entire history. So we knew something was going on, and we needed to find out what exactly was happening, especially after they announced that they was going to have a rally in New Jersey, of all places. So we basically formed a coalition, called ourselves the One People's Rally. That was going to be our counter. We had a website, which was rare at that time. It was 2000, and that's how we coordinated things for the protest, for the rally against a guy by the name of Richard Barrett, who was no longer with us. After the rally, we decided we needed to keep the coalition going. There are other people out there that we need to deal with. And that's what morphed into what became One People's Project. And over the course of that time, over the course of the past 20 years, we've been able to shut down a number of organizations. We've been able to expose a lot of the white supremacists that are in the mainstream. We got rid of politicians. We got rid of people in Connecticut that was trying to be judges. We've hurt some actors, and anybody that thought that they could not be exposed or we couldn't do anything to them, they could not be touched, they got touched. And they got removed from wherever they are. So we were really more or less a boogeyman to a lot of these hate groups out there. I mean, for most of these 20 years, the people that will talk about One People's Project and myself were folks on the right. A lot of people on the left didn't know who we were. It wasn't until Trump started gaining in momentum that people tried to start figuring out who it was that they were dealing with that were promoting Donald Trump. We were the first ones to really start talking about folks like Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor. Jared Taylor's like the godfather of the so-called alt-right. And when everybody's trying to start figuring out who we were or who they were, they saw all the stuff that we had written about them. So when Donald Trump ended up in the White House, people said, okay, we got to start making moves to make sure they didn't get as far as they think they will get. And again, we was in the middle of all of that. We was the ones that were providing information, telling people where they have to go, what they have to deal with, how do they deal with it. And at the time, I was also working on a documentary. Somebody had asked us to do a documentary about Trump's first year. And we said, okay, fine. And they wanted to look at it on from the perspective of the anti-fascists that were dealing with all the neo-Nazis that were just coming out of the woodworks at the time. So I said, okay, I'll participate in this. And we went to a number of different scenes. And we went to Nashville, Tennessee, where there was an annual white supremacist conference that takes place in the woods, 45 minutes outside Nashville. They're going to have another conference again this year, May 28th to the 30th. And so if anybody wants to know more about that, I can tell y'all. And then they were all done. They had everything they needed to tell the story about Trump's first year in office. And I told them, it was all in the can. And I told them, look, if you want to get more footage, there's this thing that's going to be happening in Charlottesville where everybody's going to be. I mean, everybody on their side, everybody on our side. Charlottesville is a hot spot because they already had 2 rallies prior to the one that we eventually became to know as the Unite the Right rally. So they said, okay, we'll get some folks in the local area to come and follow you around for Charlottesville and get that extra footage if you think it's good. After Charlottesville, we changed the whole dynamic. It wasn't about Trump's first year anymore. Trump is probably in the documentary for about 10 minutes total. And it became the documentary, you can find it on Netflix, and it's called Alt-Right Age of Rage. And it tells you exactly who it was we were dealing with at the time and how dangerous they are. Charlottesville was important not just for us to understand what was happening out there, but it was also the aftermath of Charlottesville was the shot across the bow to the other side. They realized that they messed up. They realized that they pushed us too far after Charlottesville. Because what happened after Charlottesville? We started getting people fired from their jobs. Family members started disowning their sons and daughters. You couldn't even work at a hot dog stand. This actually happened. You couldn't even work at a hot dog stand without getting fired because you went to Charlottesville. Basically, 1,000 neo-Nazis doxed themselves. Now, the groups that were there started freaking out. They realized that they couldn't do the public rallies the way they used to. They couldn't come out and start screaming at everybody, talking about you will not replace us, Jews will not replace us, blood and soil, without us perking up our ears and saying, oh, really? Let's talk about that effectively. Because they realize that the moment that they do that, we're going to be like, we'll see about that. So a lot of the groups that were there started changing their tactics, started changing their names. A group called Identity Europa is now calling themselves the American Identity Movement, AIM, or as we prefer to call them, AMIN, A-M-I-N, so we don't get them confused with the American Indian Movement. There was another group, the Proud Boys, who we will talk about later. They disavowed the rally before the rally happened and said they weren't going to be there. We found them there. Or we found people that will eventually be there. The leader of the Proud Boys, the current leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, is on video standing with the militia groups acting as though he was providing security. And then there was a group called Vanguard America. Now, Vanguard America, they was the ones, if you see footage of this group walking around chanting blood and soil, that was them. They were participants in a lot of the violence that went down. In fact, James Fields was marching with Vanguard America. We can't say for sure that he was an actual member of Vanguard America, but he was with them. And James Fields, as we know, went on to kill Heather Heyer at that rally when he drove his car into a crowd of people and is now serving the rest of his life in jail for it. Vanguard America knew that the heat was on. So they needed to change. Along come, one of their members is a guy, 18 years old, named Thomas Rousseau. Thomas Rousseau had the control of the website and the other things that basically put Vanguard America into the spotlight. He changed everything. He changed the name to Vanguard. Basically, he changed the name to Vanguard America. And that's what we call Patriot Front today. But what we see from Patriot Front today is just simply flyers. If you go onto their social networks, you will see their flyers plastered all over the country. They're rather bold. They'll have flyers dissing indigenous people here that have flyers that say it's not stolen, conquered. Or they'll try to pretend that they're about labor, they say defend American labor. They try to pull on the patriotic routine. And for those of you who heard everyone saying Antifa or the real fascists or whatever, Patriot Front makes no bones about the fact that they're fascists. It's on their logo. Their logo is the fascists surrounded by 13 stars. So if you really want to fight fascism, if you're concerned about the real fascists, you're going to have to be concerned about Patriot Front and do something about it. If that's what you believe. And I'm saying that in particular to any libertarians that might be saying this, because libertarians like to be a Trojan horse, unfortunately, to a lot of these groups, and it's getting to be a little problematic. I don't want to diss libertarians across the board because not all of them do this, but enough of them do this for us to be concerned and say, listen, we're gonna have to talk about this. You're not fighting for freedom if you're allowing fascists the freedom to be fascists. You're kind of going against your mission a little bit. So this is always, so a lot of times, one of the things that's really important to remember about flying from this group and some other groups that I'm going to mention in a few minutes is the fact that this is the standard. They want to put flyers out so everybody can see them. And the main thing that the most important thing that they look for is if somebody is writing about it, somebody is reporting on it. And when they do that, they just think it's a job well done. Unfortunately for them, anti-fascists are out there too. And when we see their flyers, we have scrapers and we just take them down. Or we have our own stickers and we just cover them. Or we have markers, or we just cross out their information before the newspapers get to them. So that way, they lose their notoriety in the mainstream press. Now, the fun thing that happened with us here in Bay Ridge, they were putting their flyers all around, they were doing their stickers. We didn't know about this, except for when I watched it on one of their social networks. Someone that's associated with One People's Project called us. And he's not from Bay Ridge, he was just happened to be here this particular day and said, you know what? I think I see some people out there that are getting ready to do something. I'm gonna go videotape them. He was with his kid, so he can only do but so much. He videotaped them dropping the banner over the overpass. And that's what everybody has seen, the video of that. And the photographs of some of them unmasked. They always like to mask up because they do not want anybody to know who they are. But in this case, they were caught slipping, and he was able to get some pictures. And that was seen on Channel 11 just a couple of days afterwards. So and we also have the license plate of a pickup truck that might belong to the local leader. He's not here in New York. He's somewhere upstate. But we have their license plates, and we have their truck. It's a possibility that was the same person that we saw at the Trump rally passing out Patriot Front flyers in Wildwood just last week. But we don't know for sure. But Patriot Front is on notice because of that video. And that's one of the reasons why they had to put those flyers around the church as some form. I guess they think they were going to intimidate us. It doesn't look that way. We're here. So I think the fact that they have to hide means that they're the ones that are intimidated by all of y'all, and even some folks that aren't even here today, because they know that the jig is up. And they know eventually we're going to start calling you out literally by name. We're not going to call you Patriot Front. We're going to call you by your given name. And it's only a matter of time before that happens. We just have to keep the pressure on. We just have to remain vigilant about it. And it's not just this group. We do have to deal with another group from my home state. New Jersey European Heritage Association is also posting flyers all around the city. They're a smaller group. They were also in Charlottesville. They went to unite to write the first one in 2017, as well as the second one in DC in 2018. I want to say there's about 4 or 5 members. But as long as they can put their flyers around and you see that flyer, doesn't matter how many they are, one flyer makes a difference in the media. So it's run by a guy named Dan D'Amblin, that's D''Ambly, who used to work for the Daily News. I guess he worked in the print shop in the print shop in Jersey City. After we got his name, he wasn't there anymore. In my hometown, I believe he lives in my hometown, Somerset, New Jersey, Franklin Township. And that's because I started seeing a lot of NJEHA stickers all over the place. And he runs with a guy that I have been dealing with for years, this character by the name of Ron Sheehy. He's in the Pipe Fitters Union, and he's in a number of different groups over the past maybe 4 or 5 years I've seen him. And he was in the Advanced White Society, which was also based in New Jersey. Then they disappeared, and now he's running around with the NJEHA. He's a really nasty character, always drunk, and he's rolling around with Dan D'Ambly and his group. So those are two names that you can definitely keep an eye on. Now, Trump had a rally in Wildwood last week. And I didn't see the Patriot Front guy. Ironically, there was only but a few of us. There was only but a few of us that were looking for the neo-Nazis in that crowd. We knew we were going to find them. There was only maybe about 3 or 4 of us. And the guy from Patriot Front just happened to hand a flyer to the one guy who would blow it up all over the place. His name is Jared Hood. He works for Right Wing Watch. He put that flyer that was just shown in his hand, and he was just like, well, thank you. and he's a reporter. So he reported that he got a flyer from Patriot Front. And he also got the picture of the guy who gave him the flyer. A small picture, but it works for right now. We'll figure out who that person is. I ran into Dan. And he loves me a lot because I had been causing him grief. I've been causing him grief for a couple of months at this point. I was writing about him and just basically putting him out there in the public. So it was at the point I was just wandering around. I walked past him and I was like, and he's about this tall. And I'm sitting there going, is that? And he's passing out random flyers to everyone. I think I got one of the flyers in my bag here, but I walked up to him and said, could I have a flyer? And he said, no. I know you. You're Lamont Jenkins. You doxed me. You got my tires slashed, and you're going to get sued. Now remember, I don't know where he lives, so I didn't do that. And I was trying to tell him that in between my fits of laughter, but it didn't matter because he just kept on calling me a terrorist. And I'm sitting there going, you were in Charlottesville talking about trying to make violence and you're calling me the terrorist. And then he started saying some nonsense about, I hope you die of cancer, because I had cancer a couple of years ago. And I was just like, okay, my day has been officially made. So I just started following Dan around. You can see the video all over the place, and he's just running away from me, and I'm just saying, okay, fine, run for your life, beat it. So, but it showed that you had the folks at the Trump rally. So it was a banner day for me to just go to a Trump rally and hang out. Few 3%ers there. We know the 3%ers are a militia group that likes to associate and have some members within that crowd. And I will tell you right now, don't sleep on that 3% nonsense. I mean, they try to tell you that they're all just about freedom for everybody. They have black members and nonsense, and it doesn't matter. You're still just as fascist as anybody that seek highs. So we have the NJEHA. There's a third group that I mentioned earlier called the Proud Boys. Now the Proud Boys have a different dynamic. They're fascists. They hate the fact that women are in the workplace. They hate Muslims. And they're multiracial. So they get over in that regard. And the stuff that they pull is a little different because they can do public rallies still. They're tied in with Roger Stone. They can come out in the open and act as though nothing's wrong. But again, we saw them in Charlottesville. So everything is wrong. And they can play dumb all they want. Let me tell you what happened, how I first met them. I actually met them, I believe, during their first appearance. I even videotaped this, and this is on YouTube. Is everybody familiar with a character by the name of Milo Yiannopoulos? Well, Milo, for those who aren't familiar with him, he says he's gay. He's a British gay guy who used to write for Breitbart. He used to be a tech editor for Breitbart. And he is very, very fascist. And he held an art show of sorts in Manhattan where he invited people to bring their art for display. And the best artists out there showed up, the best named artists, you know them all. James O'Keefe, Martin Shkreli, if anybody who don't know those names, they're not artists. They're conservative provocateurs, dare I say alt-right provocateurs. And the Proud Boys were there doing security, didn't know who they were yet. They threw some guy out because he was a protester for this event. And they chased him away, and he dropped his phone. He came back to get his phone. The founder of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, was there. He picked up the phone, slammed it on the ground, broke the person's property. Gavin McInnes believes that the biggest thing to remember about the Proud Boys is that they believe that the way to their mission is to engage in physical confrontations with their political opponents. In fact, it is your way to becoming a full-fledged member of the Proud Boys is to engage in that physical confrontation, to cause some sort of harm. As Gavin McInnes told, what was his name? A radio talk show host who was on Newsmax, Steve Malzberg. He told him on the show, violence is a very effective way to solve problems. This is the guy who complains about Antifa being violent. When you might be familiar with the Proud Boys and what happened to them last year, they attacked anti-fascists outside the Manhattan Republican Club, where inside Gavin McInnes was joking around about how a socialist Japanese leader was killed back in the 60s. And in the ensuing fight, a number of Proud Boys and another group that we'll be here forever talking about called the 211 crew were arrested, and some of them got probation. 2 of them are serving time in jail for about the next 4 years. And Gavin McInnes is angry about being called a Nazi in all of this. Angry about the Proud Boys of being designated as Nazis. Which was ironic because a couple of months before, July 6th, I was at a Proud Boy rally, and Gavin McInnes was comparing the Proud Boys fighting Antifa to the Germans who fought the Soviets in World War II. They said they were the Germans. They said they were the Nazis. They were the Wehrmacht. They said the way the Wehrmacht handled the Soviets was exactly how it felt for them to fight Antifa. He doesn't want to be called a Nazi. He just wants to be seen as what they did back in the day. Curious. I find something else interesting, and this is really important. I know a lot of people are not really down with bringing law enforcement into anything, but this is really important. MS-13 was founded, just like the Proud Boys were founded in Brooklyn, the group MS-13 was founded in Los Angeles. They deported their founders. They deported them back to El Salvador. Gavin McInnes started a political street gang, a political terrorist outfit, dare I say. He's a Canadian national. Why is he still here? Is it because he has money? No excuse. Fact of the matter is, we have members of his group from New York to Portland sitting in jail right now because in the commission of acting as Proud Boys, they engaged in political violence. Gavin McInnes has no business in this country, just on general principle, and it's something that everybody should think about. And I'm saying this because I just want to show everyone that there are ways to handle these characters. We are not helpless. Yes, they have freedom of speech, and it's fine with me. What they got to understand is that we're listening, and the reason why you're all here is because we heard enough. So now, what do we do with that? Okay, let's talk about Patriot Front for a little bit. We got to find out who Patriot Front members are. That's going to be the first clue. We got to know who is involved with these groups. And a lot of times, they're going to be involved with other right-wing, more mainstream groups, just looking that direction. Unfortunately, you're talking about a lot of young people. A lot of young people. So some folks might even be in your high schools. I would say walk a very fine line when it comes to that. They are still kids. Not all of them are still kids, though. And they need to be brought into the light. We need to know who they are, and we need to just call them out, and it will stop. It will stop in one form or another. Now, especially if they want to go on with their lives. If they want to have a future, they need to change up how they approach life. And if they don't want to approach it, they have to be asked out. I don't care how young they are, because they get old eventually. I don't want them to be old and influential. None of us do. So that's the important thing. We got to monitor their moves. Whenever they show up, I was a part of a group called Activist Action, and one of the lines that they say, wherever they go, we go. That scares them, especially if they're sneaking around at night. We have to find out where they go. We have to find out who they are. And we have patrons from here. We have NJEHA or some members here. Whenever we see these flyers, we got to figure out, okay, how can we find out who put those flyers up on the wall? Are they security cameras, for example? Did we accidentally come across them as they were dropping a banner? Who are those faces that we had in those pictures? Who does that truck belong to? You know, even just the rallies that we expect them to be at. There was a Sharia law rally here in 2017, back in June of 2017. They were there. The Identity Europa types were there, along with the 3%ers. If any of y'all are capable of doing so, just walk through the crowd and take pictures. You might need them later. You might see them somewhere else. That's how we know a lot of these characters. I mean, that is if you are willing to be active out in the streets. Most important thing, monitor your social networks. Before you get them banned or blocked or whatever, see how much information you can get from their accounts. Whether it's on Telegraph or it's on Telegraph is one of their sites that they go to since they can't be on Facebook or Twitter, allegedly. Because unfortunately Facebook and Twitter seem to have a problem with getting rid of all of them. But when you see them on Facebook, when you see them promoting some sort of event in the area, be like, okay, so who's signing up to be a part of this? Who is a part of this? Who is organizing? And just take note. My organization would love this because we are trying to build a database, a new database with all these names, with all these individuals. And it will be helpful if we can start connecting the dots that way. So if you see something, say something. But I would tell you, before you even come to us, say something to your neighborhood. Because if it's happening in your neighborhood, then your neighborhood needs to know to be on the lookout. Education is key. Knowledge is key. But application is going to be very important in the years to come. We don't know what's going to happen in November with Donald Trump. If you notice, I didn't really mention him all that much. Did he spearhead a lot of this? Sure. But we had video from February 2015, a couple of months before he announced he was running, of them talking about getting Donald Trump up here. So they're the problem. Ultimately, we have to deal with them. We cut that source off. People like Donald Trump, and people who are probably even more savvy than them will be cut off at the knees. You won't see any more Donald Trumps. Donald Trump Jr. will not become mayor of New York as he's threatening. I really hope he's not going to become mayor of New York anyway, but still. I think it's really important that we slipped up in 2016. He ended up getting in there. We are going to have to correct course. How we do that is by being more vigilant and being more active. And the reason why we are going to be more vigilant and more active is because we have a life that we appreciate. We build that life. And even though you're out there fighting, you got to remember to enjoy that life. Because if you are enjoying your life, if you are appreciating your life, they already lost. Because you're going to fight for that life. And that's what I want to tell you today. I want to hear from y'all now. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm David Sigmund. I'm the pastor at the church. They've asked me to moderate some questions for Dale. The rules will be that if you could try to ask your question briefly, 30 to 45 seconds, and Daryl gets to choose whose question he'll answer. Then he'll answer it, and then you can rebut briefly if you would like. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Thank you all for caring. Thank you all for coming. Let us begin with questions.
We're going to, I think the mic is coming through.
Would we even find these rallies posted?
A lot of us basically keep an eye on them. One People's Project is trying our best to make sure that we have announcements of where they're going to have their rallies in the on our sidebar. So if you go to IDAVOX, we have a news line called idavox.com, IDAVOX. On the sidebar is a list of events that are coming up. We don't have a lot right now because there isn't anything rumbling right now. But for our purposes, you can probably go there. Just other than that, I would say just keep an eye out on what other anti-fascist groups are doing. New York City Antifa has some things whenever whenever something is coming up. You just keep an eye out on Twitter accounts that monitor the fascists, monitor the right wing, I should be honest with you, because remember, when the right wing comes out, they come out. There is supposed to be something with Patriot Front happening in the DC area, but we don't have enough information about that to let everybody know what's going on. It's supposed to be happening this weekend. So I wasn't really going to bring that up simply because we don't have any information. But as soon as we get that information, we'll let everybody know. If we get that information. It might be as clandestine as it can get, and we will never get it, but who knows. I will tell you also if there's one event, one concern that is outside of this area that we're closely monitoring, and I'm definitely going to be there. It's that conference that I talked about in Nashville, the American Renaissance Conference. We also call it the Ameren Conference. The reason why we're concerned about that is because that's where they go to network. That's where they go to coordinate. 2 weeks after the Ameren Conference of 2017 with Charlottesville, the Charlottesville organizer was there. Richard Spencer was telling people at this conference, and you can see this on that documentary I mentioned, that he expected Charlottesville to be particularly traumatic for the liberal people of Charlottesville. That's the kind of people that are going to this event. There is a Belgian member of parliament that is supposed to be flying in that's facing weapons charges, hate speech charges, Holocaust denial charges, and he's being allowed in the country. That really should not happen. There was another guy, I believe his name is Camus, I can't remember, but he's out of France. Everybody talks about you will not replace us. He's the guy that came up with the Great Replacement. He's coming here. And that guy influenced the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. He wrote the inspiration for that knucklehead down there to do what he did, Brandon Tower. And these folks are coming here to this country. Maybe they shouldn't. Talk to your State Department, talk to people, and see if we can keep them out of here. And there is information about that conference on our website, on idavox.com. But I would say just keep an eye out on social media, keep an eye out on anti-fascist Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts and websites. They'll have all the information you need.
What about the British president? He's a Holocaust denier too.
1 second, we're gonna take questions with the answer. Okay? Next question.
Turkish president is scum. Yeah, I will tell you that right now. I mean, let's just let that. And Trump loves him to death. So that's what I'll say about that. But let somebody else get a comment. Get something to you first. I will go to the person in black there, and then the woman in the aisle after her. I'm taking stack.
Thanks. So in the past week or so, I think I've seen at least one, potentially two, stories of armed groups, mostly men, approaching and entering state capitals, presumably to do some kind of gun rights advocacy. I think Virginia and maybe Kentucky more recently. They're being reported on as if these are sort of separate phenomena, like they're not connected in the coverage to the more explicit hate groups. Is that accurate? Do you think there's a connection?
There is a connection. I was at the one in Richmond, Virginia.
And how concerned, I mean, those are very disconcerting images.
Well, the thing about Richmond, Virginia, in general, I know which one you're talking about in the other state where they were just allowed to go into the state house with their weapons, and we would have never gotten away with that on election. In fact, we did the Black Panthers sparse gun control when they did that in California. So, but the one in the thing in Richmond, it's bigger than just their guns. The guns are really a side issue compared to what they're really upset about. The Democrats took over the legislature in Virginia, and a lot of Democratic socialists got in too. And they were promising a lot of changes that go beyond gun rights. They do have some gun control legislation on the books in the planning stages, but one of the legislators there had to go to a safe house because of all the threats of violence that was directed towards them from that crowd that was supposed to be there that day, Martin Luther King Day to be exact. And he was pro-gun. He still is pro-gun. The thing is, he had a bill that he was planning on reinstating. They had tried to work on it before. It was a bill that was similar to New York's Taylor Law that said that public employees are allowed to strike. We can't strike in New York City if you're a public employee, and you cannot strike if you're a public employee in Virginia. They were going to strike that down. That's the main thing that they were ticked off about with him. The whole thing about Virginia was that they was looking at a red state that went blue. And they started to freak out, and they said, we all need to be here to keep that from happening. Now, as for the white supremacists that were there was a group that usually rolls around with the Proud Boys called the American Guard. The American Guard is founded by a guy named Brian James. Brian James is a white supremacist. He started another group called the Vinland Social Club. And before that, it was the Outlaw Hammerskins. Hammerskin is a well-known hate group, neo-Nazi hate group. He was in the Klan a couple of years before that. He has his dossier rooted in nothing but hate. So they were there. I ran into a guy named Ron Doggett, who lives in Richmond, so it was understandable, but I knew him from another hate group called the National Alliance. The National Alliance was founded by the guy who wrote the Turner Diaries. Turner Diaries, how did the war in the Turner Diaries, race war in the Turner Diaries started? Because somebody was going in there to try to get their guns. And then, of course, the Proud Boys were there en masse. And I don't need to say any more about the Proud Boys. If the Proud Boys are there, then you know that something shady going on. And I don't even want to discuss another character. There's another character by the name of Joey Val that shows up at all these things. And he's an Hispanic neo-Nazi from here in New York. And he's just an idiot. You will see him at every rally, every right-wing rally, just to be an idiot. He's a spectacle. So if you will know who I'm talking about when you see him. You don't even have to know what he looks like. All you have to do is just see idiot, that's Joey Val. But yeah, that's how it works.
Hi. So I'm sort of more posing a situation, I think, than asking a question.
Sure.
I don't see kind of a lot of physical manifestation of white nationalism in our community. I think the posters that went up were kind of an unusual event. What I see is a really awful, pervasive attitude of bigotry and of fear that potentially feeds into it. I see a lot of sentiment in our social media that reflects the sentiment of white nationalism without people expressing it, knowing that they're doing it, knowing that they're really on that trajectory. So my goal is to stop it where it's at, in a non-confrontational way, to bring up facts to low information people, to provide examples to do that. And I'm kind of making a plea to our community for everybody to kind of step up that effort. We cannot change people, we can communicate that it's unacceptable. And I don't think we're doing enough of that. And those of us who are not in target groups, and as a woman, believe me, I've been targeted plenty of times, we need to step up our game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, immigrants really can't. Women wearing hijabs, it's a really tough nut to ask them to get in the face of somebody who's spewing Islamophobia. But we can. And I'm asking us to do that. It might not be happening at the supermarket. We damn well know it's happening all over our social media. And I see a lot of people saying, oh no, I don't go into those groups. I don't want to see that. I don't want to deal with it. But that's where it's flourishing. It's not flourishing in your own little Facebook group. It's flourishing where they feel safe. And we need to make them feel unsafe.
Okay, well, let me make it clear. You're absolutely right. Yes, definitely applaud that. Because that is why we're here today. First, and that's in you. The first, remember when you talk about ignorance, the first word in ignorance is ignore. You cannot ignore this. You cannot just think that somebody else is going to fight this battle for you. No, you do not have to get into physical confrontations. No, there will not necessarily be a physical manifestation. It's not going to be in your face all the time. But you know when you see it, you can see the overtures being made. When you see them, call it out. If you see something, say something. I mean, we see it all the time on Facebook. We see it all the time on Twitter. They had to deal with this guy named Tom Bertel in, I believe it was Minnesota, because here they are talking about how to combat hate, just like we are here today. And you had, and we've seen this, many of us probably seen this video already. This Hispanic man was talking, Mexican man was talking about how his son was being harassed in school and he was crying himself to sleep at night. And Mr. Tom Bertel said, well, why did you leave Mexico? And everybody in the room flipped out and said, that's who we're talking about. And then he went on to try to make some nonsense about how black people are the real oppressors or some nonsense. And what that town did and what his son did was call him out right then and there. His son later went on Facebook and said, Dad doesn't reflect what I believe. I support all of this. So that is an example of what you mean. We have to step up whenever we see this nonsense going on. Whenever you speak, yeah, they have the freedom of speech. So do you. You have the freedom to respond. Use that freedom. Do not let them use freedom of speech to shut you up. And I'll tell you something else too, incidentally. There are, unfortunately, those physical manifestations that come up. When Jeremy Christian out of Portland, Oregon, he stood up to try to harass women that were wearing hijab. Some brothers and sisters stood up and said, no, you will leave them alone. He killed 2 of them. Cut them. Injured a 3rd. But they stood up and they fought. And I don't want that to be the end result, obviously. It does get dicey, I'm not gonna lie. But even with that, if it's getting to that point, we have to step up before it gets to that point. So yes, before the physical manifestations happen, definitely call it out immediately. So, with the leopard and then the Princeton hat, and then I saw somebody else.
Yeah, I think this meeting is great. It's very important that we're here. But I wanted to know, what can you recommend that we do as individuals and as a community, as a group in our own community to stop what's going on. It's good we're talking about, this and that, and these hate groups and everything. But what can we do? I'm here 38 years, never saw a flyer, a Nazi, or a hate group flyer hanging over the Belt Parkway in 38 years. It's the first time ever. What can we do to stop that? I mean, what other things can you recommend is so close to home and that we could do, as a group or as individuals, other than having meetings and...
Right, well, education is the key, number one. We need to start talking to our kids and making sure that they understand that this is not the direction to go in. But here's something else too. I'm dealing with people across the country right now. We are working on a coordinated effort to try to promote events that promote unity, to try to put on events that say, this is who we are together as one people, and we reject this kind of nonsense. We don't necessarily have to come out in order to fight Patriot Front or National Alliance or whatever. We can come out to just celebrate ourselves. Earlier I said we need to enjoy our lives. This is the perfect opportunity to show how much we enjoy our lives. Why don't we all just come out and say, okay, let's have a block party that promotes unity. Let's have a show. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen an anti-fascist show in town. Actually, not true, because there was something called Black Flags Over Brooklyn last January. Mad props to Kim Kelly's putting that one on. And she did a heck of a job with like 500 metal bands just came out, including my boys, Race Trader. They're actually called Race Trader. Fun fact about Race Trader, the drummer's from Fall Out Boy. So yeah, you could probably get Fall Out Boy to come and play one of these gigs. But see, we should do events like that. Some of y'all probably are not into the metal scene. I understand that. No. I mean, there's some people that are, but let's face it, some folks that isn't their speed. Doesn't have to be. Just put on events, an educational event. I was talking with some folks in California a couple of weeks ago, and I suggested that one of the things that they could do, they do this thing in DC where they just had every 4th of July, they have the entire mall just set up where you can go to various spots in the mall and just hear people tell stories from their cultural background. I mean, they just one guy there, they'll probably do some sort of performance, one-man performance as maybe a Civil War veteran, for example, a Black Civil War veteran. Or you can go to an Indian section where you'll hear a story from that culture or Hispanic culture, so on. And I forgot what it was what they called it, but that's just an example. And I gave that example to some folks in California and said, you know what, we can set that up now. We can do that now. Set up events at your public library. Do something, some sort of festivals. These are the things that we are promoting with a group that I call, that's called the Anti-Fascist Unity Coalition. That's the group that I'm with. And there are folks from Tennessee to Portland to Chicago, some folks up here. We all just trying to say, you know what? We got to do more than just fight. We got to step back and appreciate ourselves. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the approach that we should take.
It's a tough neighborhood.
Hey, it's a tough neighborhood, but we can soften them up.
I need to find
We can soften them up with music and poetry and and shopping. We can do that too. Hungarian Festival in New Jersey always brings out the shoppers and the music. Do that here too. Well, Princeton Cap, then you, and then you.
I'm kind of picking up on what the lady in the leopard said. And building on what you said, it's doing proactive programs to build community, et cetera, that's wonderful, okay? But then bringing it back to where we are today. So if there are stickers on the church, God forbid stickers on the synagogue, posters over the highway, what do you do?
Well,
What do you call? How do you arrange a counter rally or?
well, I wouldn't. If it's not in the media, if it's not in your newspapers, take them down. Just take it down. They want the promotion. Today, we had to talk about it. Today we had to talk about it. The only time that I feel that they should be promoted is if we have something out there, if we have something on them, something that they don't want out in the public, like that video that we shot. But if you see the stickers, take them down. We know they're here already. We don't need to keep saying they're still here. Just remove them. Make them go away. They get more upset about that than you not doing it.
And as someone who's here this morning, I can say it was a comfort that I just talked to the people who were coming to this rally. We took it down, and I knew people were going to be here that cared, and we're going to present another face. That is a response. And we have numbers.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to come up to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
He's got the mic.
Oh, okay.
For you.
Thanks. I'm wondering about if one wanted to do an outreach, it's a forum for parents who may have young kids or, teenagers or college-age kids that are being reached out to online by some of these groups that, are trying to pull them in little bit by little bit. Kids who are, very technical and like to game and stuff like that. I'm wondering what resources may exist of people who know how to can explain ways of talking to your kids.
I'm actually, believe it or not, I would say Southern Poverty Law Center. I would say Political Research Associates has these things. Political Research Associates, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. For those kinds of things, I would say those are the two that I would definitely go to. They have that kind of thing set up. So they're mainstream organizations, but they've been doing this a lot longer than I have. So.
Thank you.
You, sir, and then ma'am.
Hi, thank you for coming out and meeting with everyone and sharing what you had to say. You had mentioned Portland, Oregon, and in the course of me researching about these hate groups, it seemed Portland's a real hotbed of activity there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've read in a couple different articles and Twitter reports, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but law enforcement complicity or participation with these groups. In your experience, have you seen this much?
Yes. And it's frustrating because the chief of police in Portland is now in Philadelphia. She's the police commissioner now, Danielle Outlaw. And she's being touted as the first black woman to be commissioner of Philly Police Department. But in Portland, that didn't mean a thing. Because I can tell you, I was there on August 4th of 2018. That was when basically the police attacked anti-fascists on behalf of the Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer. Patriot Prayer is another group. And by that time, Portland had been dealing with Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys coming into Portland every month, holding rallies and attacking everybody. That's why some of them are sitting in jail right now. In fact, on that day, there were some Patriot Prayer members taking sniper positions over our crowd. The police caught them and told them to leave. That's it. Meanwhile, you had lieutenants that were letting Patriot Prayer know that certain people shouldn't come to the rally because they might get arrested. Cops shouldn't be doing that. Now, that person is sitting in jail right now because people caught that and he said, you got to go pick him up. He's a young kid. His name is Tiny. He's about 22 years old. And really, there's a lot going on with him. All of it inexcusable, but a lot going on with him. But I am certain that after he is done with his time and his probation and all of that, he's not going to be involved. But that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, when we started picking up on the fact that the police in Portland were just basically facilitating whatever it is these hate groups were doing in Portland, folks cried foul. Things are toning down in Portland now. I was just there about a month ago. And the groups are basically on the ropes. Proud Boys are on the ropes. Patriot Prayer is on the ropes. And sadly, however, Portland has been dealing with this for a very long time. 1989, there was a group called Eastside White Pride that killed an Ethiopian immigrant. And ever since then, it's just been the war. They've just been fighting in the streets. People have gotten killed. People have gotten injured, But they've also fought back and caused a lot of damage to these groups. We're probably going to see a little slowdown because the groups that were in vogue for the past 2 years are gone. They really can't do what they want to do anymore because we got and some of them are sitting in jail right now. Ironically, however, the Klan is going to have a rally in Washington this weekend. So they still have the drama. But it's not as bad as it had been over the past couple of months, thank God. So, and then, yes, I see.
So what can I do as a 13-year-old?
As a 13-year-old?
Yeah.
One, you're here. Two, Mom, what can she do? Because really, when you're talking about 13, you can see a lot of the nonsense in your schools, I'm sure. I would say work with others your age and with adults as well to see what kind of programs, to see what kind of things that y'all can do to push this forward. This goes back to the whole thing about doing the outreach, doing the events for unity. What kind of things can you come up with? What kind of programs can you come up with?
Can I ask you a question?
She can.
As in the neighborhood that I'm experiencing here, which I've been a part of for many years, I'm not happy that I go to a local bar and I see people just coming up to me and thinking they can talk to me about their support of the current administration. I'm not even going to get into the details, but as a kid, excuse me for saying that to you, but do you see that at your age that the parents that are coming towards me are teaching the children? I mean, are they more like your mom or more like the guys and the girls that I'm talking to in these local places that are driving me crazy with this horrible rhetoric? I mean, I don't know where it's coming from. And is it coming from the moms and the fathers of your peers? I mean, that's a question I really want to know. How inbred is this neighborhood?
Okay. So for my community and the activities I participate in, I'm not faced a lot of yelling at me about the other side, my mom and the people I'm surrounded with. They educate me and they encourage me, and the people around me, the kids and my friends, they're also encouraged to learn and to speak out and to empower yourself and others around you. So it's mostly positive learning, and positive thinking, and positive action.
So there's hope in the next generation of this?
Yes. I would say it'd be real important to make sure that whenever you see some problems, make sure that your parents know, make sure that adults know, because that's what they're dealing with in that school that I was talking about earlier. That's going to be the first step. It's going to be the first step. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you're at these white supremacist rallies and you're photo documenting them, are you met with significant aggression, and how do you maintain your safety and de-escalate those situations?
Being 380 pounds helps. A 380-pound black man can sign to de-escalate things really quickly. But no, seriously, I don't necessarily, when I've been dealing with them for so long that my attitude is that they're more afraid of me than I am of them. I mean, I've had my share of scraps over the course of my life. So I know how to handle myself if something goes down that way. If I am in a gun-friendly state, I'm carrying. I was carrying when I was in Richmond. And I was carrying in Charlottesville. So, just in case something went down. Happily, nothing did. And I would just say that it's not for everybody. You have to know where to stand. You have to know who it is you're dealing with, how it is you're dealing with. You have to make sure that no one's coming behind you, that kind of thing. There was actually video of me from July 6th of me just arguing with a crowd of Proud Boys. And it was cool. I just had, a lot of times, they just want to have a conversation. Okay, I'll give them the conversation, so long as there's no swinging. If there's no swinging, we're good.
And it's not my role to interject, but I just would say one thing. There are resources in the neighborhood. There have been the Arab American Association, in partnership with a couple other groups, does a really wonderful upstander training that is both about positive conversation and de-escalation and recognizing who you are in that moment in the situation. So there are plenty of community advocates who could help direct you if you're interested in that. And sorry,
Oh no, I was done. I see a couple of hands.
Just tell me where to go.
Okay, Sonia? Yeah, and then Sal.
I feel like
Did I see hands up over here too? Okay, all right. You lead.
I feel like in some other conversations I've had with people in Bay Ridge, I live in Flatbush, I'm from Queens originally, but since this stuff has popped off in Bay Ridge, people, talking, and then there's a lull in the conversation, and then someone goes, but why? People want to know, people in the group who are talking want to know, why are folks becoming fascists more now? Like the existential question of, obviously white supremacy is the foundational component of many countries, and it's been an ever-present part of people's lives, minorities and all that, and yet, obviously, you're talking about the resurgence we're seeing, and I think a lot of people have questions about how to get politically educated, and kind of have thought-provoking conversations maybe with their family and friends around the dinner table about why folks are responding to general alienation through channeling it through bigotry.
Right.
And how to counter that, which is a much larger societal structural question. So I guess my question for you is, and I know obviously the answer to this question would be different depending on your political ideology, but do you have any suggestions for things that people might read, or, something for people to read about, I guess, alienation, the development of fascism, not like at the governmental level, but societally and stuff like that, because I think, yeah.
Oh boy, I can probably tell you some books by people that are talking about anti-fascism. Bray, there's a book called Antifa, the Anti-Fascist, the Handbook. That's a good one.
Very, very good.
Oh boy, all these book titles are now missing in my brain. Alexander Reed Ross has written some books. Shane Burley has written books. I need to write a book. But I would look, I can't remember the titles for some strange reason, but I definitely remember the authors. I would say look for those books. And I'm quite sure there are tons of other books out there. But there might be some videos to check out on YouTube. Nothing's coming off the top of my head right now.
Maybe when your head's not so full, we can have it posted on the
I would definitely do that. And then
I'll be really quick.
I ran down.
I have a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to say something.
That's not.
That's not
And I apologize for actually saying your name out here.
I did, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to say, for people who are saying, what can we do as a community? There's really so many things that you can do in this community of Bay Ridge. We're here. And not everybody knows that we're here, but we are. And we have social media groups and Facebook groups, and we did the rally. I agree with Daryl's point about do the kind things, do the gentle things, do the things where you come together. That was the Stand in Solidarity rally. And anybody who wants to do anything like that, if you want a book group, if you want to do a rally, if you want to do a library thing, reach out to us like that, Bay Ridge, and we'll support you in that. We'll publicize it for you, we'll reach out to our networks. will help you. I think it's, like that David, the pretty big, there's actually a lot of us. And then we have, like at least 8 different groups that we work with, we partner with. So, we also have socials. So if you feel that you're disconnected from your neighbors, come with us, hang out, do it once a month. What's the name of the group like that there?
I can also ask another idea because I'm surprised I'm forgetting this because of how Hollywood I've been over the past couple of years. But you can also do movie screenings. One of the things that some of the groups around the country have been shown was The Great Dictator, the old Charlie Chaplin movie. Of course, my movies are good to watch. Showing the documentary. Hey, I'm here. I'm going to mention my movies. I'm going to mention that Skin, the feature film, is in fact a real good movie. It stars Jamie Bell as as Brian Wagner, a guy who helped get out of the white power scene. Vera Farmiga is in it, and Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, is playing me. So that's a good movie. Also, there's a short film called Skin that is on YouTube. I suggest you check it out on YouTube before you have a screen, because you're going to want to talk about it after the screen. It won an Oscar, and I was a co-producer, so technically I got an Oscar. And I would definitely say Alt-Right Age of Rage is a good documentary to check out. There's some local folks here that also did a documentary that you can also find on YouTube called Antifa. There's, I can just run down a long list, but yeah, screenings are a really good way to start generating some interest and discussion. So maybe that would be a perfect idea. Yeah. You, Gray, in the gray. I had in the gray. Oh, I didn't want to. I just realized that.
So thanks to Fight Back Bay Ridge for organizing this. I don't know if you And going on with what Sally said in terms of the number of things that we can do, one suggestion that I have, and also related to what Terry was suggesting, is that since we know most white supremacists are cowards, in this community they largely hide in social media behind fake profiles and sort of permeate filth through this cowardly anonymity. And one thing that I think could be really helpful is a sort of digital skills training in doing some of that mapping of like, who are these people actually? What kind of language are they spouting? Tracking that. And it goes to that sort of like preventable idea that, we find these people and suss it out. And I think it could be really helpful just in the long run because, I don't have the skills to be able to research, who these folks are and who's participating in this, but I could tell you some leads just by participating on social media. So just a suggestion in the future.
If anybody wants to be involved, incidentally, in the Anti-Racial Unity Coalition, we do Zoom conferences every Sunday, so if anybody wants to get involved, just let me know. What is it? Anti-Fascist Unity Coalition, and for those who don't know what Zoom conferences is, that's basically us all, it's a teleconferencing tool that we use. And if you want to talk about, it's basically a bunch of us all over the country talking about what kind of events and what kind of things can we put on. We want to do a Rock Against Trump show sometime in the summer. We just don't know where we can do it and how it will look. We want to do a national unity, anti-fascist unity march sometime during the month of October, because that would be the 161st anniversary of the raid on Harper's Ferry. So we're calling it John Brown 161. So, and 161, if you know anything about anti-fascism, you know that 161 has some significance. So. The lady in the pink, and then the gentleman in front of her.
So I keep on just thinking about removing stickers and how it's important to remove the stickers, and I understand that, but the stickers feel so surface level, and once you remove the stickers, you're still left with people who hate a lot of people. And so I guess I would love to know, and maybe I have to watch your movies to find this out, but what your experience has been in actually changing people's beliefs
Well, I would tell you when it comes to dealing with people and their beliefs, they have to come to me. I'm my father's son, and my father was a drug counselor. And my father did not go into like the drug dens and say, come on now, you don't need to do drugs. They hit rock bottom, or they realized that this was not helping them, and they went to my father and said that I need help. And my father said, okay, but you better know what that means. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot. That's how I approach it. I mean, I'm not a jerk. I don't have to be a jerk to them whenever they're trying to get out. I will tell you that there's a lot of them out there that are getting out that still have a lot to atone for, and they're trying their best to do so. Brian Widener is definitely trying his best to do so, as well as a whole bunch of others. I would say, by the way, I should point this out, there are a number of individuals out there that have gotten out of white power scenes and are going around the country speaking out against them. There's a lot of legit ones. I mean, Brian White is one. Elise Hannigan out of Canada is another. There are some out there that might be running a game. Jeff Scoop, formerly of the National Socialist Movement, I don't trust him. He just got out, and all he's doing is using the platform to attack Antifa more. So be on the lookout for folks who are just trying to get paid versus folks who are just trying to educate. And I'm just throwing that out there as a little PSA. But there are people that are trying to get out every day. Basically, they grew up, they have kids, and they realize that this isn't the direction they want to go in. And you're going to see a lot of that over the next couple of years because a lot of the folks that are in Charlottesville, a lot of the folks that are in the so-called alt-right, they're going to have careers. They're going to realize that what they did maybe 4 or 5 years prior is starting to hurt them. And they need to do something to fix that. So be prepared, here they come.
So you actually took most of the words out of what I was going to say, but given that we were kind of talking about disinformation and how to identify that, and that there's definitely a lot of need to have some training around that, I'm not going to ask a question about that. I am going to ask, given that there's so much disinformation and propaganda coming out on the right, especially online and in social communities on the internet, what can we do to create our own propaganda to counter that? And I say this, and I mean it, propaganda is a dirty word.
It is.
And I don't think it ought to be, because ultimately it's about information and the communication of information. So what can we do to become more literate on actually where does information need to be targeted? Where can we post it so that it's not just lost in the...
Well, propaganda is a dirty word even to me, but I understand where you're coming from. And that's the thing. That's what One People's Project and Out-of-Box has been doing for 20 years. And that's what Southern Poverty Lawson is doing. That's what It's Going Down has been doing. That's what New York City Antifa and another outlet called Unicorn Riot has been doing for years. We counter it. We counter their lies by telling the truth. Their biggest strength is telling lies about us. Our biggest strength is telling the truth about them. So as long as we maintain that, as long as we don't get caught up in the weeds of trying to maintain a narrative, because that's what happens with a lot of activists, people will get it, people will understand. But you basically just got to say, okay, here's the lie, here's the truth, and here's the proof that this is the truth. You gotta be able to know how to counter it, and it's really easy when it comes to some of these characters. You just got to put it out there. You want to follow up?
Yeah, I just want to follow up because I guess being frank, as someone who's 23, I genuinely sometimes feel looking around, probably statistically half the people in this room don't really either aren't on social media or don't know how to use it to the fullest extent. And that's not condemnation, but it's just
you're gonna get in trouble.
As a community, is it about do we need to start holding education sessions on how to use Facebook intelligently and protect yourself online?
That'd be nice. Whatever works. Whatever works. I mean, however you think that it will advance things, do it. Unless you're wrong in doing it. But however you think it will advance things, by all means, just like Lotto, you got to be into it. So there was a lady with a baby back there. And
I just want to check in with you. I know that there are more questions and people are here because they care, but I know you also came from New Jersey on bus and train.
I forgot what time it was.
Why don't we establish our limits here so you don't get over pushed, and we'll keep the conversation going in our neighborhood.
Okay, we'll just rock and roll with 3 more questions.
All right, you got that?
We got the lady with the baby. We got the plaid shirt because I saw him.
That would be counterproductive if they don't get picked, right?
Well, somebody's going to lose.
I'll let you pick.
All right. The lady with the baby, and then the gentleman with the plaid shirt up in the ear, and then you. We talked about Erdogan earlier.
The question is, this is happening at the same time. I don't think coincidentally with the anti-Semitic attack, and as a result, people commit support, then you hear people trying to build back bail reform, which is also based in racism. I don't think it's coincidence at the same time. So what do we do when it's politicians trying to say, get rid of bail reform, let's take it back?
It is because of the politicians that we have this climate right now. And I would submit that this has been going on in New York City for a very long time, since at the very least Ed College. I will tell you, when David Jenkins became mayor, this is when I started getting into activism and advocacy. When David Jenkins became mayor of New York, you just started seeing a barrage of the politicians trying to just undermine the fact that David Jenkins was the mayor. You know, and then he lost to Giuliani, and we really saw the nonsense that went on. So the local politicians are to blame. In fact, what we see in the alt-right today had its roots here. In New York. It was fertile ground for a lot of these folks who wanted to be as fascist as they want to be, but get away with it. And he was able to get away with it in the name of law and order, in the name of fighting terrorism, when they were the terrorists committing crimes. They just had suits and badges. I think about the fact that in Philly, there's a DA named Krasner.
Yeah.
And he overhauled the entire system there. He fired everybody in the DA office there. The result has been 10 or 11 people that have been serving time for about 30, 40 years, getting out of jail free when we realized that they didn't even commit the crimes. And the reason why we never knew that is because the prosecutors at the time withheld evidence, coerced witnesses. And that is happening all over the country. So it's our politicians that are the reason why we have the climate that we have today. So what do? We got to get rid of them. We got to get rid of the problem people. Duff Hyken is one of those folks that I think had been in office for too long. He's gone already. He's gone now. But he should have never been in office that long. Peter King should have never been in office this long. And they should never have been allowed to leave on their own. But there's more out there that we got to handle. We just got to identify it. But in this climate, they're keeping their mouth shut. But bear in mind this thing, Donald Trump was from here. He now lives in Florida. There's a reason why he felt comfortable.
Now he hates us.
Now, yeah, because we're causing some discomfort these days. Keep it up. The gentleman in the flag, and then the gentleman in the... I said the gentleman that brought up Erdogan, he'd be the last one. I'm sorry, man. I can talk to you later on. But no, the gentleman in the flag is...
I'll make it quick. So let's say you're in a situation where you don't have a means of escape or a means of talking someone down. What are New York legal means of self-defense that we should look into and train ourselves in, whether it's with our hands, feet, or other implements?
You probably just answered your own question. I think when it comes to self-defense, when it comes to dealing with these characters, do whatever you must. Do whatever you must. I don't know necessarily the laws here in New York. I do know that when I had a 9mm stolen in Williamsburg, while I was living there, I had to tell the police, and they arrested me. They detained me for about 5 hours and then let me go. To the racism, by the way, or in this case, the anti-Semitism, they were basically just cool with it and said, yeah, you cannot have a firearm, you cannot have a handgun here in Brooklyn unless you're a diamond merchant or something. I did not know diamond merchant was a slur yet. Otherwise, I would have said something. But yeah, you got to know your laws and you got to know your limits. But bottom line is, you still, regardless of whatever the laws are here in this city, you still have a right to protect yourself by any means necessary. So, you sir, and then I'll leave.
Hi, I'm George. I'm here coming to this meeting to learn about hate groups and hatred. The thing is, we're talking about the extreme things. Now, I'm fighting fascism on both sides, the left and the right. I don't see that. No. And everything in the middle. If you put everything online, like bisexuality, heterosexual, and homosexual, there's a big in the middle that people are being polarized. This is the opportunity for people to talk to each other, learn from each other's experience. Doesn't mean you have to accept. The thing is, the hate groups are out there. What about the religious hate groups? The black Israelis, the Orthodox churches, the Muslim mosques.
Now, the reason why I asked you to take the mic, was because I knew that's where you were going. I didn't want to leave on that note. Let me explain, man. Let me explain. Hate is going to be a problem no matter in what community, but we're not just looking at one side or the other. There is no both sides. Thank you. There is no both sides. What you are talking about is the lie and the subterfuge that the right likes to throw at us. In the end, the problem people that you have will not be a problem if you leave them alone. That's the truth. That is the honest to God truth. When you talk about religious groups, when you talk about any group that's engaging in hate, what is it that they're responding to? Now, the folks in Patriot Front are responding to the fact that they're white and they can't do what white people used to do to the rest of us. Now, when you talk about me as a black man, or when you talk about Hispanics, or when you talk about people in the Muslim community or people in the Jewish community, they're responding to keep that nonsense at bay. There is no hate in that. They are defending themselves. You've got to remember that. And the reason why I wanted to end on that is because we all need to recognize what it is that we are fighting. Amen. We are all one people, per my group's name. And in the end, whatever it is that you're concerned about, like you said, you need to talk. Don't get angry. Just talk to folks. Where is it your concerns are best addressed when you talk to the people respectively to the folks that you're concerned about? You should not be concerned about somebody of color. Somebody of color is simply trying to keep a cop from shooting him in the head while he's going home. And if you bring up the fact that black people are committing crimes out there, there's a woman in Fort Worth that's dead right now because all she was doing was playing video games with her nephew in her house. So,
Can I just add, it's the kind of thing I'm saying we all need to step up and address. He didn't come in here hostilely, but he did come in here spouting a lot of ignorance. And that is what is pervasive in our social media. It runs from ignorance to hate, and the rest of us need to step up our game. We really do.
all right. Thank you. So, and she's right. This was a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier. It was absolutely right. You're not a bad person, man. I hate the fact that I made an example of it.
In my house.
You're not.
You don't know me.
You're right. I don't know you. You're right. I don't know you. All right, hold on, man. You're not a bad person, but you don't want to turn yourself into one either. Absolutely. 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 And with that, so now question is, do we want to end on that note, or do we want to have one more
How about
question?
one more question?
Huh? This lady's been waiting. Okay, let me take her.
Hi, my name is Gabriela. I'm Latina, I'm Muslim too. I just wanted to say that thank you guys for preparing this. So one of the things I do is I'm well connected to a lot of organizations, the Muslim Police Patrol, Performing Arts Mosaic, which we do a lot of invite a lot of artists and aspiring artists to perform. So I'm very connected with them, so I can always see what we can do. In regards to you mentioned that there are people that are not very well connected with social media. There are other ways we can work out. I think if we go and post in the Grindr, a poster, coffee shops, libraries, businesses, tell them what's happening in Bay Ridge. I'm pretty sure a lot of them I don't want this to happen, and they will post it so people can actually see it. And that's how you can partner with people and let them know what's happening, so they will reach out to us and stand against that.
And think about it, yeah, we can make flyers too. Yeah. We can post them too. Yeah. Remember that.
Thank you.
Woo!